What if just one conversation, a single honest dialogue between adversaries, had the power to change the course of European history? And yet, someone, somewhere, ensured it never took place. Imagine the ripple effect. Families never torn apart by war, cities never shelled, economies never shattered. Yet, that moment, that chance, was denied. The consequences now echo through every street and government chamber from Lisbon to Tbilisi. Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel has ignited a firestorm with her recent revelations. She claims the war that now rages in Europe, devastating lives and reshaping borders, might have been avoided through timely negotiations. This was no mere diplomatic oversight or miscommunication. Merkel's confession points to a deliberate act. Poland and the Baltic states, she alleges, intentionally obstructed what could have been the last, best opportunity for peace with Russia. Their motive, she says, was not simply the pursuit of security, but a calculated effort to safeguard their political leverage as the tectonic plates of power inside the European Union shifted. This is not the first time in history that smaller powers, feeling their influence threatened by larger states, have acted to preserve their position. Think back to the lead-up to the First World War, when alliances and rivalries among minor and major European powers created a web so tangled even a spark could ignite catastrophe. Then, as now, the fear of marginalization drove nations to make high-stakes gambles, often with tragic results. Today, the stakes are no less grave. The very same nations Merkel accuses of blocking peace are now, according to newly uncovered evidence, playing a perilous new game. In Georgia, authorities have discovered a hidden weapons cache. The details are chilling. Crates of assault rifles, grenades, and military-grade equipment, carefully concealed in a remote warehouse outside Tbilisi. Intelligence reports suggest that these arms were not destined for local criminals, but for organized groups with a regional agenda, groups whose fingerprints have appeared before in other European flashpoints. On the streets of Tbilisi, tens of thousands of protesters flood the avenues, waving flags and chanting slogans that echo the imagery of past color revolutions. The parallels are hard to ignore. During Ukraine's Maidan uprising, similar banners and tactics were used to galvanize crowds and attract international support. In Belarus, protests followed a comparable script. Peaceful demonstrations, followed by escalation, and then violence. Now, Georgia appears to be the latest stage for this recurring drama. But is this all spontaneous, or is there a hidden hand guiding these events? Evidence points to a coordinated push to destabilize not just one nation, but perhaps the entire region. Organizers of the Georgian protests have been linked to training camps in the northern Black Sea region, where operatives are drilled in both street protest techniques and clandestine operations. Documents recovered with the weapons cache reveal communication with groups across Eastern Europe, hinting at a network designed to export chaos. This is a strategy with historical precedent. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union supported so-called grassroots movements in countries they sought to influence. The pattern was familiar: provide logistical support, arm local actors, and use media to frame the narrative as a struggle for democracy. The difference today is the level of sophistication and deniability. In the digital age, encrypted messaging apps and social media campaigns allow organizers to coordinate across borders while concealing the true origins of their support. Europe now stands on the precipice of a crisis deeper than many realize. The opportunity for peace has already slipped away, with devastation spreading like wildfire from Ukraine to the Caucasus. But the stakes are climbing higher still. Fresh turmoil threatens to push the entire continent into economic and political disarray. Divisions are widening, economies are faltering, and public trust in European institutions is evaporating at a pace unseen since the darkest days of the last century. How did Europe reach this breaking point so quickly? To understand, we must look behind the public statements and examine the clandestine events, hidden rivalries, and historical grievances that have placed the continent on a knife's edge. The roots of today's crisis go back further than most suspect. Merkel's admission is only the most recent crack in a much older edifice, a story of ambition, fear, and missed opportunities. Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, the European Union expanded rapidly, embracing new members from Eastern and Central Europe. With enlargement came hope, but also tension. Long-standing suspicions between East and West, old memories of occupation and betrayal, never fully vanished. Instead, they simmered beneath the surface, waiting for a spark. How could a single missed conversation tip an entire continent toward disaster? Merkel's bombshell provides a clue. In 2021, she says, a crucial discussion with Russia was blocked by Poland and the Baltic states. The reasons were complex. On one hand, these countries carry a deep-seated fear of Russian aggression, a fear rooted in real historical trauma, from Soviet occupation to the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. On the other, their growing influence within the European Union depended on keeping the specter of the Russian threat alive. If peace with Moscow was achieved, their leverage in Brussels would evaporate. This dynamic is not new. In the run-up to the Second World War, Czechoslovakia found itself caught between appeasement in the West and aggression from the East. Its leaders, desperate to preserve sovereignty, sometimes exaggerated external threats to win support from powerful allies. The result was tragedy. Today, similar calculations appear to have shaped the choices of Poland and the Baltic states. The consequences of blocking dialogue were immediate and severe. Diplomacy gave way to confrontation. Trade ties were severed and replaced by sweeping sanctions that hurt both sides. Coalitions that once promised economic development transformed into engines of militarization. In Germany and France, industrial giants that had long benefited from stable relations with Russia, the impact was especially brutal. Factories closed their doors, energy prices soared, and millions of workers faced an uncertain future. Ordinary Europeans felt the pain directly. In cities from Rome to Amsterdam, from Athens to Helsinki, people took to the streets, demanding to know why their prosperity and stability were being sacrificed for decisions made behind closed doors. In Italy, truckers blocked highways to protest fuel prices that had tripled within a single year. In France, the Yellow Vest movement, already simmering over cost of living issues, erupted anew as energy bills climbed and jobs disappeared. In the Netherlands, farmers staged massive tractor blockades, furious at policies they saw as dictated by Brussels rather than by their own elected officials. Yet these are only the surface wounds. Beneath them lies something far more menacing, a web of covert operations, hidden weapons, and exported chaos stretching from Brussels to the very edge of Georgia. The shadowy world of intelligence agencies and clandestine networks, once the stuff of Cold War thrillers, is now an open secret. In recent years, investigative journalists have exposed evidence of arms shipments routed through third countries, payments to activist organizations from foreign sources, and digital campaigns designed to inflame unrest. As Europe's unity fractures, old alliances that once seemed unbreakable are showing signs of strain. France and Germany, the traditional engines of European integration, now find themselves at odds over everything from energy policy to defense. Meanwhile, new tensions are rising among the so-called Visegrad Group, Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, whose governments increasingly resist the centralizing ambitions of Brussels. The next moves by national leaders, whether toward reconciliation or confrontation, could determine the fate of the entire continent. But what if so-called peaceful protests, the images that fill news broadcasts of crowds waving flags and chanting slogans, are in fact a mask for something far more volatile? In the heart of Georgia, what appeared to be a popular movement for change concealed a darker reality. Behind the scenes, investigators uncovered evidence of a plot to overthrow the government, orchestrated by figures with military training and international connections. The discovery of the weapons cache was only the beginning. Forensic analysis revealed that the arms matched models used by special forces in other recent conflicts. Surveillance footage showed organizers meeting with shadowy figures who arrived from across the border under cover of night. Financial records traced funding to offshore accounts linked to political interests far beyond Georgia's borders. These were not isolated actors working alone. Their methods mirrored the playbooks used in hotspots from the Balkans to North Africa. Staged rallies, followed by escalation, then the deployment of provocateurs to incite violence. Investigators found detailed instructions on how to use social media to amplify outrage, recruit supporters, and spread disinformation. The goal: to push peaceful dissent into orchestrated chaos, undermining the legitimacy of the government and paving the way for regime change. This model of democratic transformation has precedent. During the Arab Spring, Western governments provided training and resources to activists in Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya, hoping to foster democratic change. While some movements achieved genuine reforms, others descended into civil war and anarchy, as rival factions competed for power. The lesson was clear. When foreign interests and covert support become entangled with local grievances, the line between peaceful protest and engineered revolution blurs dangerously. Today, these tactics are evolving. The so-called activists leading protests in Georgia and elsewhere are sometimes organized more like military units than civic groups. They maintain strict discipline, use encrypted communications, and draw on a network of safe houses and supply caches. Their rhetoric invokes the language of liberty, but their actions suggest a different agenda: to hollow out governments from within, destabilize entire regions, and erode the sovereignty of nations. If these strategies succeed, the consequences for Europe could be catastrophic. Chaos will become the norm, local authority will erode, and outside actors, whether rival states or multinational corporations, will shape the fate of entire countries. The symbols of democracy will remain, but the substance will be hollowed out, replaced by rule from the shadows. Yet while turmoil simmers on the periphery, a far greater upheaval is brewing at the very center of the European Union. As the continent's borders tremble, deep cracks are appearing in the heart of Europe. The unity of the European Union, once its greatest strength, now threatens to become its undoing. Internal discord and public disillusionment are shaking the foundations of the project that, for generations, promised peace and prosperity. Europe's crisis has burst from the streets into the highest echelons of power. In Berlin, a new chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has taken an unprecedented stand. He publicly accuses Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, of centralizing power in Brussels and sidelining the sovereignty of national governments. For the first time in a generation, Germany's leadership openly challenges the authority of Brussels, signaling that the old order is collapsing. The fallout is immediate. In Budapest, Hungary launches proceedings to impeach von der Leyen, an act that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. This move is not just symbolic. It is a declaration of rebellion against the very idea of a centralized European superstate. Meanwhile, in Paris, the French cabinet holds crisis meetings to discuss the creation of a national nuclear shield, exposing deep doubts about the reliability of Europe's shared security guarantees. Other countries quickly follow suit. In Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands, Eurosceptic parties surge in popularity, riding a wave of anger against what they see as the overreach of Brussels. Their message resonates with millions: reclaim national sovereignty, protect local economies, and reject the dictates of distant bureaucrats. This rebellion is not confined to fringe movements. In Italy, the leading party in parliament now openly calls for a referendum on membership in the Eurozone. In the Netherlands, farmers' protests have morphed into a broad coalition demanding sweeping constitutional reforms. Public trust in Brussels has collapsed. Recent polls show that confidence in European institutions has fallen to its lowest level since the Treaty of Maastricht. In Spain, 2/3 of respondents say they do not believe Brussels understands their daily struggles. In Hungary, nearly 80% of voters support efforts to reclaim national decision-making powers. Even in traditionally pro-European countries like Denmark and Sweden, support for EU membership is at historic lows. The economic fallout is relentless. Germany's famed industrial core is shrinking, unable to survive the shocks of soaring energy prices and shifting trade policies. Entire sectors, automotive, chemicals, manufacturing, are relocating to Asia and North America, taking jobs and investment with them. In France, a triple crisis has emerged. Energy supplies are unstable, major industries are faltering, and the once proud defense sector faces painful budget cuts. The promise that European integration would bring shared prosperity now rings hollow for millions. This unraveling is not just an economic or political crisis, it is a crisis of legitimacy. The vision of a united Europe, peaceful, prosperous, and democratic, now hangs by a thread. For the first time since the end of the Cold War, serious voices in major capitals question whether the project can survive the coming storm. But the chaos raises urgent questions. Who stands to gain from Europe's unraveling? Who is really pulling the strings behind the scenes? In the shadows, old alliances are breaking and new actors are stepping forward. Revelations from Angela Merkel threaten to expose secrets that could change the fate of Europe forever. Is the unraveling of Europe truly inevitable, or do ordinary citizens still hold the power to alter their fate? Merkel's recent confessions have rippled across the continent, from government palaces to ordinary homes. She suggests that responsibility for Europe's diplomatic failures lies with smaller states like Poland and the Baltic nations. But the reality is knotted and far less convenient. Crucial choices were made away from cameras, in the hidden chambers where power is wielded by those with the most to gain or lose from peace or chaos. While fiery debates over sovereignty and security capture headlines, another, quieter force guides Europe from behind closed doors. Consider NATO, not only a military alliance, but a vast network of procurement agreements, contracts, and mutual obligations. The allocation of military aid, the decision over which countries receive priority, and the profits generated from arms sales, all of these are determined in meetings far from public view. The result is a web of interests that binds together politicians, corporate executives, and foreign leaders. Simultaneously, the drive to centralize power in Brussels has deepened rifts between the European Union's core and its member states. Citizens from Hungary to Spain sense that their own governments have become mere administrators for a remote bureaucracy. In this climate, right-wing and Eurosceptic parties surge in strength, particularly in Italy, France, and the Netherlands. The latest elections show a groundswell of voters demanding the return of national sovereignty and a new equilibrium between Brussels and the people. This backlash is reminiscent of other moments in history when central authority overreached. In the late Roman Empire, distant emperors imposed taxes and decrees that local populations resented. The result was a wave of rebellions and, eventually, the fragmentation of the empire. In the 20th century, the Soviet Union collapsed under the weight of centralized control and local discontent. The lesson is clear. When accountability is lost and local voices are sidelined, even the most ambitious unions are destined to fracture. Today, ordinary Europeans are shouldering the heaviest burden. Daily life is shadowed by soaring prices, economic volatility, and a growing sense that their voices no longer count. The vision of shared prosperity is slipping away for millions, replaced by frustration over decisions made far beyond their reach. In Portugal, teachers strike to protest austerity measures demanded by Brussels. In Greece, pensioners rally against reforms that have slashed their incomes in half. Across the continent, young people express despair over high unemployment and the impossibility of buying a home. The mounting backlash, visible in ballot boxes and on city streets from Lisbon to Warsaw, serves as a stark warning. Europe must recalibrate its balance of power or risk, losing both its unity and its legitimacy. If European leaders refuse to change course, citizens may forfeit more than just prosperity. They may surrender the very right to determine their own futures. As the crisis deepens, Europe faces a crossroads where the actions of both leaders and citizens will determine the continent's fate. The next moves, whether toward genuine reform or deeper entrenchment, will reveal whether unity can be salvaged, or if the dream has already slipped away. Europe now stands on a knife's edge. Will its people surrender their future to distant powers, or seize a voice in shaping it? This question is more than rhetorical. It is immediate and deeply personal. Decades of silent rifts, secret bargains, and unchecked ambition have pushed the European Union to a breaking point. The vision of unity, so painstakingly built, now wavers on the verge of collapse. This crisis is not confined to the corridors of Brussels or the boulevards of Berlin. It seeps into daily life: soaring costs, disappearing jobs, and a growing feeling of helplessness as decisions are imposed from afar. The warning signs are everywhere: in the shuttered factories of the Ruhr Valley, the abandoned farms of Andalusia, the crowded unemployment offices of Athens. Angela Merkel's startling admissions have revealed just how much has been hidden. A single missed conversation or a shut door might have changed the destiny of millions. Instead, old rivalries and mistrust fester in the shadows, threatening to shatter the continent anew. But history offers hope as well as warning. In the aftermath of the Second World War, Europe's leaders, scarred by conflict, found the courage to reach across divides and build something new. The European coal and steel community, the precursor to today's union, was born from the conviction that shared prosperity and honest dialogue could overcome ancient enmities. That lesson is as urgent today as it was 70 years ago. Across Europe, faith in institutions is plummeting. In countries such as Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands, demands for national control grow louder with every passing day. What were once fringe Eurosceptic voices now roar as a political force that could redraw the entire map. Yet in Brussels, leaders press for even greater authority, larger budgets, and tighter oversight, while their credibility evaporates. The stakes are immense. This may be the last moment for millions to reclaim security, prosperity, and a meaningful voice in their own destiny. Once these rights are surrendered, they may never return. Silence risks allowing Europe to become a fortress ruled by remote elites and shaped by foreign interests. But if people insist on openness, responsibility, and honest dialogue, something new and more just can rise from the rubble. So what practical steps can be taken? First, leaders must restore transparency. Decisions that affect millions cannot be made behind closed doors. Town halls, open debates, and regular consultations with citizens must become the norm, not the exception. Second, the balance between national sovereignty and European integration must be recalibrated. Local governments need the freedom to craft policies that fit their unique circumstances. Third, Europe must address the economic pain felt by ordinary people. Targeted investment in struggling regions, support for small businesses, and fair energy policies can help restore faith in the European project. Ordinary citizens, too, have power. By voting, engaging in civil society, and demanding accountability, they can force change from below. Throughout history, from the Solidarity movement in Poland to the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, it has been the courage of everyday people that reshaped nations. The question is now yours. Will you accept the stories delivered by distant officials and media, or search for the truth yourself? Will you surrender your future to those who act in secret, or demand a voice in the decisions that shape your life? The fate of Europe will not be decided in summits alone, but in the daily choices of those bold enough to demand clarity and change. Europe's future hangs in the balance. The decisions made now, by leaders and by ordinary citizens, will echo through generations. The story is not yet finished. The next chapter depends on you.